The year is coming to a close. The format is coming to a close. We're going to be here for a while now without any more huge impactful releases, you know, until the end of January. I don't believe we get anything at all even. I don't want this to turn into a huge discussion of is a diverse format good or not, because that's kind of the big deal right now. You know, the format is very diverse and some people are happy about that. Some people are not happy about that. You know, shout outs to Pack. I personally am somewhere in the middle. I definitely understand why people are frustrated with not being able to properly prepare for an event, because there's like so many different decks you need to be prepared for and nothing really feels like a good solution to the format, you know. And entering an event as someone who tries really hard with a deck that you don't feel 100% comfortable with because you know it has a bunch of bad matchups doesn't feel great, right? On another hand, I understand even more after freaking winning YCS Bologna with one of my favorite decks in the format. I appreciated the opportunity to just play what I liked, you know. I can definitely see why people like just being able to play their favorite decks or have a lot of options. I get it a lot more now. I think it has pros and cons, but I just want to talk about the specific decks and how a potential ban list could look like. Now, to be clear, we have no idea when that's going to happen. Just based on the fact that it's been like a solid 3 months now, I think, since we've gotten one. There's a lot of powerful decks in the format right now. I would say the power level currently is decently high. You know, most of the decks in the format right now are at almost full power. Whether it happens in a week or in a month or in 2 months, not really that relevant. I just think it's interesting to think about how they could tackle the current format, because the very interesting and tough part about this current format and making a ban list for it is that there's a lot of decks that you could argue are at a very similar power level. At least in terms of representation, we have like 3, 4, 5, 6 decks that are very close to each other, you know. The one event, Rescue Ace comes out on top. The other event, it's Tier, then it's Unchained, then maybe it's Lab, maybe it's Pearly. What do you do? If a lot of decks are at similar power level, do you just hit all of them? Do you hit none of them? But that's also weird, you know, you can't just like do nothing about it. So let's hop right in. I have a little tier list prepared. First things first, do not touch my RUNICKS or else. Literally, please don't, man. Please don't. It was an accident, all right? There was one Runic deck in top 64. Don't do it. Like, actually, no way. If anything, bring my fountain back to 3, you know? Like, we've suffered enough. Please, I'm begging. Okay, anyways, on a serious note, I don't think they should. The cards are not problematic right now. One spot in top 64, no shot. There were 4 times as many Centurions and 4 times as many Fire Kings than Runic decks in top 64 at YCS Bologna. There's no shot you can make an argument that RUNICKS should be on the ban list. Impossible. Impossible to make that argument. Talking about Rescue Ace is very weird right now. All the results speak for it. Rescue Ace is the most powerful deck in the current format overall. Even though a lot of decks are viable, Rescue Ace keeps performing better than other decks. The only issue I have with evaluating Rescue Ace on a potential ban list is that the archetype is not new, but it's not been relevant for very long, and it's only going to go up from here, right? After all, they do want to sell their Snake Eye support and all that, and currently in the OCG, the best way to play the Snake Eye cards is still Rescue Ace next to Fire Kings, but Rescue Ace is a super relevant deck with the new support cards. I do not think they are interested in gutting Rescue Ace completely, but I also don't think they have to. Rescue Ace is still going to be pretty good even if they do something small to it. I don't think Airlifter to 2 is the correct way to do it. Like, that's what the OCG did. I'm more of a fan of like limiting emergency and not doing anything else to the Rescue Ace cards. I think that's cool because you can still 1-card combo with so many cards in the deck, right? But it's just like if they open with Airlifter or anything like that, you can just hand trap the Airlifter more consistently with like an Imperm or a Veiler, and they can't dodge it as easily. Something like banning Turbulence just straight up kills the deck, right? Limiting emergency to me is a fair way to do it. People are saying Headquarters could also be an interesting ban, to which I say, you're right, it would be an interesting ban because it would ruin the grind game. The problem is, I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think that's their way of tackling a deck, just hitting the turn 2 follow-up. It would be too smart in a way. It would be very atypical for a ban list to just ban Headquarters. I don't think that's realistic, even though I do agree it would be interesting. I want to talk about the Dia Bellstar package. Obviously, it's very, very new, expected to be meta for, I want to say, at least 6 or 7 months from now or whatever. Most likely, I don't think it will be hit. However, what I thought was still worth mentioning is I think if they wanted to, no pun intended, they could hit this in a very nice way without actually ruining it or anything like that. Because one of the coolest things about the Dia Bellstar package is that no matter which of the 3 cards you draw, the engine works. The most broken thing about the Dia Bellstar package is really just the wanted card itself, right? Because that's the one that goes plus. And most people are playing 3 wanted, 1 Dia Bellstar, 1 Snake Eye spell. example, I think something like just semi-limiting Wanted would be completely fine, and you leave these two unlimited, right? And now what people can do is they can just play 2 Wanted, 2 Diabell Star, 1 Sinful Spoils, and it's still the same amount of consistency, the same amount of cards in your deck that still do the same thing. They just don't go +1 as often. The only issue is, that's both an argument for and against this, is that like the Wanted card is the most expensive card in Age of Overlord next to SP Little Knight and Quarter Centuries. So I don't know if they want to do it. I think at 2 it would still be decently expensive. It would also help the market a little bit because the engine is too expensive, let's face it. Like, people hate that it's that expensive. So even though I don't know how realistic it is, I think it would be a good decision because it would make the card more affordable. The engine would still be strong and it would not make the card unplayable. You could still get value out of the stuff you got at release. Like, you still can play with your 2 copies. I think it'd be fine. Calamities is a card that I have on here because, you know, it's the most toxic thing that the Centurion deck does. The problem with this card is that the Centurion deck is not a problem. And even though I agree with you that this card overall, it should be banned, but I simply don't think right now is the time for it because it's literally the only thing keeping the Centurion deck in the format. Without this card, the Centurion deck simply does not do enough. And that's why I don't think they want to do it, because Centurion is already the only freaking thing that's even remotely worth picking up Valiant Smashers, and they are not going to ban a card that will kill Centurion. In an ideal timeline, hear me out, we simply get good Centurion support that makes the deck playable without Calamity, and then Calamity gets banned. That's my take. Tier elements, I could think of 3 cards they could potentially hit. I have no issue with that deck at all outside of the Mill 5. I personally think they should just ban Agido and Kelbeck. It's been long enough. Like, honestly, no one wants these cards in the game. If they, for some reason, don't want to do it, they can, I guess, hit Perla Rhino. I personally am a much bigger fan of banning the Mill 5s and keeping Perla Rhino at 3. I only have an issue with these cards. If they go to mill cards off of the top of their deck, the only card that has me freaking roll my eyes if they hit it is one of these 2. Everything else is fine, but please get rid of these cards, man. They just have gambling written all over them. Pearly's in a weird spot because out of the top 5, 6, 7 decks, it's like by far the least represented. So you could even make an argument to not hit Pearly at all. The problem is we're gonna make some hits to every meta deck in my list. And I think if you just leave Pearly unhit completely in that environment, it's probably not a good idea because it's gonna be freaking unbearable. I don't think limiting Noir, it makes much sense. I think you don't touch Noir. I think you touch Sleepy Memory or My Friend. I could see something like My Friend to 1, Sleepy to 2, maybe just My Friend to 1 is enough. Maybe just Sleepy to 1 is enough. Something like this. I like Pearly. I just don't like how, as long as Pearly is in the format, every deck needs to run out to a freaking Towers monsters. I think that's not a very good environment to be in. I think I can live with just one change to it. If they limit Sleepy or My Friend, I can live with that. I think Unchained is a really cool deck, and I couldn't really think of any one hit that was really good for Unchained. I think my suggestion for Unchained is to limit Sharvara, simply because that makes it so you have less ways to outplay cards like Imperm or Valor. The deck is still good. It loses a little bit of consistency. Banning Caesar, I wouldn't hate it. Don't touch Caesar, says the person called DDD Purist in chat. Okay, I get it. No bias. No bias. Yeah, I see you. I think banning Caesar would be okay. I just quite frankly don't think that's what they will do. I would be pleasantly surprised if they did. Like, honestly, if they just left Unchained full power, just ban Caesar, I'd be fine with that. I think the more realistic one is 1 Sharvara, and that's also fine, I think. I'm not going to discuss this. Plans should not exist. This is not up for debate, okay? We're not going to spend more time. I just want Jasmine to go. That card needs to be gone. Aroma will get support. Yeah, this is not going to happen. I'm just not that lucky. They're not going to do it. I'm just saying, because this is my somewhat wish list, I'm going to put it on here and you can't convince me otherwise. Labyrinth is another weird one because the deck is getting huge support, and I don't know if they want to kill it right before that or if they want to really touch it right before that. However, I think leaving Labyrinth completely untouched is also incredibly dangerous because you risk it being just way too dominant. I think Big Welcome going somewhere on the ban list is fair. Big Welcome to 1 or 2 is a big hit, but even with that, dude, Transaction Rollback is such a good card that I think Labyrinth is still going to be fine. It's going to survive. Out of a lot of the top decks, Lab has been one of the least dominant in the TCG. I don't know if it's quite time to limit Big Welcome. I think I'll put it to 2. Well knowing though that if they only put Big Welcome to 2 and nothing else, Lab is going to be top tier in January. Branded doesn't really need a hit. I mean, this deck's like tier 5. I still want Gimmick Puppet to be banned. This is more a wish than a prediction. I have no issue with Branded whatsoever. It's just freaking get rid of the Gimmick Puppet lock. What's taking you so long? Like, get rid of that stuff. Isolt has been around forever, and it seems like 99% of the community agree that the card should be banned, and yet they still have not done it. Like, when did this card come out? Like 16 or 17, man? Like, they still haven't done it. I think there's a good chance that this doesn't happen, but I think it should. I think Vanadium is a deck that is potentially really scary if they hit all of the other decks. I didn't know exactly what they could do to hit Vanadium that would be warranted right now, because Vanadium hasn't been doing that much. And that's why I feel bad doing something like banning a card for Vanadium, like banning Lightheart or hitting Astrolaud. That's something that maybe from a game design perspective, it would make sense, but just looking at the results from past months, it wouldn't really be fair. Ronin wasn't fair either. Yeah, that's true, but like, you know, that's a different story. And this is what I would do to the meta decks, and now we're going to talk about some staples. Now, only because a staple appears on here, that does not mean that I would hit it. For example, Eradicator is a card that, once again, I'll agree with you, card should be banned. Technically, with Labyrinth coming up as like one of the next best decks, it would be the perfect time to do it. At the same time, the card hasn't done as much recently. From that perspective, it's not the right time to do it. The card should be banned. My personal prediction is right now, it's not going to happen. Let's talk about SP Little Knight for a second. Obviously, SP Little Knight is not going to end up on the ban list. I just want to say that. When I make a ban list discussion, I view it more as like discussing the current power level of the game and which cards need to be on there, and in the long term, like which cards are too powerful. And there is no doubt in my mind that SP Little Knight is a very, very overpowered card that eventually could end up on the ban list. Right now, there's no way they could do it because people have been spending 100 bucks on SP Little Knights. The card has just come out. On top of that, I don't even hate SP Little Knight. I actually enjoy a lot of the back and forth gameplay it provides, because one thing that I really like about SP Little Knight, it's a subtle thing, but the card is much, much better for going second than it is for going first. It's not as simple as a Baron or whatever that just is like an Omni Negate or an Appaloosa. Those kind of extra deck staples I find a lot more boring than something like SP Little Knight, which SP is like a very dynamic card. It creates a lot of like very interesting interactions in grind games. I'm a big fan of SP Little Knight. I don't think it's going to be on the ban list. I don't think it should be right now, and that's that. Fenrir, I think it's about time. I've been a fan of Fenrir for a long time. I like the card. It's banned in the OCG. I don't think I would go that far, but I think I'm starting to get a little bit tired of every single time first action is special summon Fenrir. I think they have two options for Fenrir. They could semi-limit it, which would be fair. You know, you can still play Fenrir in a lot of decks and you can still search itself. However, I kind of think it's about time we talk about the potential of limiting the card, because even if you put Fenrir at 2, you can still play freaking 6 copies of it with 3 Wraith Soth and Terraforming. And then the final thing that tipped me over the edge when I thought about this morning, I think this is one way you could slightly hit Vanadium as well, right? And you can still play it in a lot of decks. Like, there's a lot of decks right now that play Fenrir to search Riceheart. Like Vanquish Soul, for example, could still play 3 Wraith Soth and Fenrir and Riceheart, and it would still be a good card in it, right? You still have 4 copies. Like, do you know what that means? Like, 4 copies of a card is still good. You're still gonna see that, right? It's not gone. I want people to play Fenrir, and I want them to be forced to have more synergies with Fenrir, like Riceheart or other stuff, like Scareclaw, Kashtira, or whatever. Limiting Fenrir kills Vanquish Soul. That is like the most two-head take ever. Most Vanquish Soul decks play 3 Fenrirs, 1 Riceheart. You can literally just play 2 Wraith Soth, 1 Fenrir, 1 Riceheart, and it's almost the same thing, except you're a little bit more weak to Droll. But you can still do it. That's such a two-head take. Like, you haven't thought about that for 2 seconds. If anything, Vanquish Soul is one of the winners of the limiting of Fenrir, because every deck that wants to search a fire monster has still no problem playing Fenrir. The decks that lose out the most from it are the ones that just wanted to play only Fenrir, nothing else, which I think is good. There have been times in the past couple months where I was sitting here and I was like, I think Talons should be on the ban list. Talons is an incredibly powerful card, and I honestly think it would be warranted for them to limit Talons. I'm going off of some other logic here, which is that if they didn't hit Talons on the last ban list, hitting it now makes almost no sense, because Talons in this format is so much worse than Talons was during Kashtira format, for example. Like, Do you remember Kashtira format? Remember the first Unchained format? Everyone was playing like triple thrust, triple talents. It was everywhere. Right now, some people play it, but it's not nearly as popular as it used to be. From a logical standpoint, if Konami thought talents should stay 3 months ago, right now, they're not gonna hit it. Tikaboo should be banned. It's not gonna happen. This is a copium take. I'm kind of mixing it up between realistic takes and copium takes. This one should be banned. I didn't include that many floodgates in this. I only included skill drain and Tikaboo. I think they're gonna leave skill drain untouched, but Tikaboo, I simply cannot make a ban list prediction without banning Tikaboo. I can't bring myself to do that. The same is true for Prosperity. I'm still at a loss for words on how long this card has not been on the ban list. I think it would be kind of a dick move to do it now because people have been waiting for the Prosperity reprint forever. And now it happened. I mean, I guess semi-limiting it would be one option to get like the best of both worlds, right? They're not completely gutting everyone who got their playsets of Prosperity finally, but they're still hitting the card in some way. So the minimum I want to see is a semi-limit of Prosperity. Let's talk about some hand traps. I think it's worth talking about Nib, even though I'm not going to put it on the ban list. Simply by sheer representation, we need to talk about it. You know, is Nib too powerful? The answer to that is I simply don't think so. I think most of the time when I think about Nib in recent formats, I think the card has been good, but it's most decks these days just have ways to play around it. You know, some decks don't, of course, rest in peace Salamangreat, but like most decks have ways to play around Nibiru, and most of the time it feels like it introduces a skill into the game because people have to learn how to play around it, how to maneuver around Nib, how to make their combo lines better around Nib. Most of the time when I'm winning my games with just Nibiru, I usually feel like it's because my opponent didn't play around it properly. Just based off of that, I think Nibiru still to this day is one of the better designed hand traps that they ever made. Shoutouts to whoever designed Nib in 2019. I think Nib is to this day a card that introduces skill into the game. I think it should stay. Droll and Lockbird needs to stay. This is probably a hot take. People are gonna disagree with me on that. I am not a fan of Droll and Lockbird, but I just simply think Droll and Lockbird feels like a necessary evil. There are so many decks that I simply don't want to imagine having to go up against without the opportunity of having Droll somewhere in my deck. If they ban Droll, they have to do something about all of those decks. Is that realistic? No. I think right now especially, Droll is in a fine position because the way I want Droll and Lockbird to be, in an ideal world, is I want Droll and Lockbird to be not good in the main deck, but I want it to be good in the side deck. That's the case right now. Most people don't main deck Droll and Lockbird because it's not good against every deck. Like it's good against some decks, bad against others. People are siding Droll, but you have the option to side it against like the decks that just do too much. I'm not trying to defend the card design on Droll. I don't think it's the best card design, but until we have another alternative, I think cards needs to stay, right? Because I'm not out here trying to get full comboed by Manadium and Rika and all that without them having to fear Droll at all. Like I don't want that to happen. Shifter, on the other hand, I'm not going to defend. That shit should be banned. Like, that shit should go with the quickness. It's not going to happen, probably, once again. Like, but if you're watching this and you're working at Konami, if you don't want to ban it, okay, I get it. Actually, no, I don't get it. But, like, I guess if you don't want to ban it, at least put it to 1 or 2, man. I don't want to have to play against 3 of them things. Now it's the fun portion of the thing where we talk about the cards that, in my opinion, should come off of the list. And that is Pankratops. Pankratops is a phenomenal card. There is no universe in which you can tell me we should have 3 Fenrir, 3 Planet Wraithsoth, and only 1 Pankratops. Pankratops is one of the most well-designed cards. It's honestly a crime that it was even put on the ban list. We need that thing. Outing Floodgates, good going second card. No one's gonna main it. I love Pankratops, man. Like, that card's been good, but it's never been too powerful. Never. Dragon Rulers, I don't know where they would put the Dragon Rulers. Just give me them all. Just give me them all. Give me all of them. I don't care, man. If you're scared, I guess you can put them all to 1 or all to 2 or whatever, like, but those cards, they're not going to do anything. Dragon Rulers are fine in 2023. But Blaster with fire decks coming, what do you want to do? Like, you want to pop a card going second for -1 in your fire deck? You think that's too powerful? Have you read like Diabellstar or anything like that? Blaster is freaking irrelevant. Believe it or not. The same is true for Trident. I mean, I guess they could limit Trident if they wanted to. Believe it or not, that thing's still banned. That thing was at 1 in Master Duel and did nothing. I even go as far and say this card could be unlimited and it wouldn't change anything. Some rank 4 decks would play it, but that's not a problem. Like, it's a rank 4 that pops a card with 0 attack and 0 defense. Bring it back. The same is true for Harp Horror. For the love of God, why is it still on here? Why are Orcust enjoyers still suffering? Most people from 2019 are eating good, except for Colossus enjoyers, but they should not be eating good anyways. Sky Striker is almost back in full power. Salad is back in full power. Both Sky Striker and Salad are even getting support like crazy. And freaking Orcust is still out here asking themselves, you know, why is Harp Horror banned, dude? Give me that back. And I agree, give them back the thing. Honestly, give them 3. I don't care. Like, just don't bring back Colossus, all right? Like, just don't do Colossus. There's probably other things you could bring back from the ban list. Those were just the first ones I thought of, especially because I believe at this point that specifically Master Duel is like a good testing ground for these kind of things. And all of these things have already happened in Master Duel, right? Master Duel has Harp. Master Duel has 3 Dryadens. Master Duel has the Dragon Rulers. Master Duel has 3 Pankratops, and none of that stuff does anything problematic in the game. So I think based off of that, I think these are very likely to come back into the TCG soon. That's my take on the current format. Like I said earlier, I think it is very realistic that the ban list is not going to be as big as this one. I tried to think of it of a way of like, if they want to hit every meta deck a little bit, what would they do? Another very realistic option for them is to just basically do almost nothing. The format is going to regulate itself a decent amount soon anyways because of the new cards that are going to come out. You know, Labyrinth is going to get a huge power spike. Fire decks are going to get huge power spikes. This is not something like they need to do this or the game will be in trouble. Not the case. I think they could just be like, hey, you know, we think the game is fine right now. There's going to be exciting stuff coming out. We don't need to do anything like that. And that would be fair enough. The stuff I really care the most about is just the stuff that I put in ban. I have no issue with most of the decks in the game right now. It's just certain cards that kind of ruin it for me. All of the other decks I just did very minor changes to, right? Like hit 1 or 2 of their cards slightly, just a little slap on the wrist, because I think overall the game's fine right now. Once again, if you've been watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments down below what you think should happen. Do we even need a ban list right now? Because I think you could make an argument, you know, we don't need one. How do you like the current format? All the good stuff. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Peace. Don't say fountain to 1. No. Don't touch my fountain. Don't touch my fountain. It was an accident, okay?